the selector knob. Yeah, bring it up. What is it reading now? 40 dB. Bring it up to maybe 55.
55.
Yeah,
Yes.
55. Just get us a little closer there.
10 more.
Yeah, 10 more. 55.
55. 55.
Which seems like a lot of gain, but let's see you.
Yeah, maybe not.
Just try it.
Yeah, and then we can do the rest with the fader, I think.
Okay, now I lost everything. I'm just talking. I have still no clue what's happening right now.
We're hearing you through the MV1 now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You're
But
succeeding.
during mic checks, let's do the adjustment on the actual physical knob of channel 2.
Okay.
Excellent. Cool.
Great work. This is
Yeah,
how
good.
you diagnose an audio chain, folks. And all you have to do is have your own Mickey.
Well, that was her, that was her original request yesterday. Was she introduced herself in after hours and then started talking, and then she started showing me all this equipment, and then she said, "But I need to know how to use it." And yes, Mickey was the first top of mind.
So we are going to, it is time to sneak into the regular mic checks. So Mickey, do you want to go ahead and zip through everybody? Just another note before we begin that, we have 11 questions now, and we could certainly use a few more because we have a full 2 hours of Q&A for those of you who are into office hours for the first time, and welcome, by the way. So Mickey, you want
Yep. Oh, did
Mickey
Bell just
freeze?
freeze?
Oh, no.
It looked like you froze in my screen. Anyway, whatever.
You froze for me, I froze for you. So there we go.
Okay. Hey,
Mickey,
folks.
You can send me back down to the panel. I did a mic check already. I mean, back down to attendee.
All right, we'll push you to attendee.
I like that level.
Hey, folks, please put your first name, last name, and location in Zoom. And on our meters here, which I forgot to pin because I have Gutron's feed pinned right now. On the meters, the goal is to hit -24 LUFS on the short term. That is the number on the upper left-hand side of meters. Audio chains in AKG 414, going into a sound devices. I'm back to the 552 today. Going to a Focusrite Scarlett 666. Let's start off with Jeffrey Powers and move on to JJ McKenna.
All right, and I am top of the order. I am using my SM58 into the QSC Touch Mix. And it might be a little bit hot on there. Sony AX700 for the thing. And oh, you got your thumb up. It switched on me to Bill for some reason.
Oh, yeah, you're in good shape. Thank you very much, JJ, and then Doug Ferguson.
Very good morning to all. JJ McKenna coming into, original sound. Okay, original sound on. Going into the Blue Yeti microphone, from there USB hub, from there into the computer. Again, Blue Yeti microphone.
Could you give us just a dB or two up, JJ? Just a slight nudge up, please.
Okay, there you go.
Let's move on to, thank you. Let's move on to Doug Ferguson and then Bill Davis afterward.
Good morning, one and all. Coming in from the Midwest on my Acacia headset into my MXL mic mate and into my PC.
Yeah, that's a good check. Thanks,
Thanks,
Bill.
Mickey.
And then Gutron afterwards.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see how the numbers fall for me today. I am coming to you on a Neumann TLM 103 through a Universal Audio Apollo Solo. And it looks like either I'm a little bit down or no, Mick, I've got the thumbs up. That's all I care about. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you very much, Gutron, and then Courtney after.
I'm here from Germany for the first time here on the panel trying to get some speech. This is a thumb, this is a clap. I'm just watching you, but
Can you give us maybe 4 or 5 dB up, Gutron, and do the adjustment on that physical knob on channel 2, fader 2.
This one?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, click it first to leave the settings. Otherwise, it won't change. Now you can move it.
Okay, just moving it now quite a bit. I'm just not sure what quite a bit means. I'm just trying everything I can manage.
Yeah, slowly nudge it up as you speak and be very gentle with it. Go very slowly as you speak.
So I'm just trying everything what my fingers can do. I'm going up. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to watch what
Yeah,
happens.
I think we're there. Yeah. Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you,
Okay.
Gutron.
Thank you.
Courtney and
everyone.
then Greg Curdo.
Well, good morning from Hollywood. My sound chain is unchanged. It's the Stellar X2 into the Samsung MXP 124FX into a Dell XPS 8930 and off into the internet.
Okay, just give
Thank
us a DB or two nudge up, Courtney, please. Thank you.
Nudging.
Greg and then Tommy after.
Good evening, everybody from Norway. It is Independence Day here in Norway, and I am coming to you on a, let's see, this is an Octava Mark 02 or 012 straight from above into an Apogee Duet and into my MacBook Pro.
Cool. Just
Thank
give us
you.
a DB or two nudge down, Greg.
Sure.
Thank you. Tommy and then Jonas to tell afterwards.
Good morning from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm talking into an RE20 going into a Sound Devices 442. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you very much, Jonas, and then Jim Hankins.
Good afternoon from Germany. SM58 going into my Mix Pre 3, going into my PC. That's a fun.
Great, thank you. Jim and then Sky Gleason.
Good morning from Metro Detroit, speaking into a PR40 into an XR18, jumping over the BSS 806 into my MacBook Pro M1.
Yeah, just a nudge down, please, Jim. Just a DB or two. Sky and then John Predator.
Okay, returning to old school Skull Candies, the original mic of choice, because that was the only thing I had at the time, and now all of my equipment is across town, and I can't see Mickey's thumb. Can't
Right,
see. Sorry.
Okay,
There's
can you
too
nudge
many-
down at the DB or two as well, please, Sky?
I can nudging down on the Zoom slider. The Zoom slider is the only thing I've got, and look at that. I see a 24 and
That's
a
a good check.
Charles.
Thank you, John Preto and then Peter Sargent.
Good morning, Mickey and friends. Heil PR40 into a Claret 2 Pre. I think I'm good there, Mick.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Thank you, Peter Sargent and then Stuart afterwards.
Good day, everyone. This is a DPA 4066 going into a Mix Pre 3M and into my Mac Pro and then into Zoom.
Just give us a DB or two down, Peter, please. Thank you, Stuart and then Charles Klein.
And I'll preempt midnight and say good morning, everybody. And hopefully my levels are somewhere close because my chain is the same as was last time I logged on here. And I'm seeing 26. Mickey, up or down?
Yeah, a DB or two up, please, Stuart. Thank you.
A tiny little bit up, and I will.
Let's move on to
be here for a
Charles.
little while.
Charles and then Guy Cochran.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Good to see everybody on this fine Monday morning or evening, depending on where you are. Coming in on a Heil PR40 into a Mix Pre 3. Thank you very much, Mickey.
Good check. Thank you, Guy Cochran, and then Paul Wallace afterwards.
Hey, Guy Cochran coming in from Seattle, Washington. DPA 4066 microphone with the thumbs up. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul Wallace, and then Mark Horner.
Morning, Mickey. I'm on the new Shure software upgrade. Hope it works. And I'm looking at a 27 dB input from my microphone. Is that how you would say it, an input from the mic? 27 dB.
Yeah, that would be the gain that is applied.
The gain, 27
yeah.
dB gain.
Could you bump up maybe 3 or 4 dB, Paul?
And also you had me turn off compression yesterday because I had heavy
Yes, sir.
compression. Now I'm using light compression and I'm bumping it up to 28 dB. Here we go. Boom. There we are, 28.5 dB. We're
Just
right
give
at
us
28.5.
one more click up.
One more
Yeah,
click
just
up. All right, up to
thank you very much.
31.5. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, 31.5. Can you go to 29 or 30, please?
It goes from 31.5 to 30. So I'm at 30 right now. It
Okay,
kind of
I
goes
think
in
we'll-
odd jumps.
Yeah, I think let's stick with that. All right.
All right, stick
Mark
with
Horner,
30.
last on the list. Yep. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening, everybody. Mark Horner, Seattle, Washington. Shure SM7B into a DBX 286S into a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2 3 4 5. Thumbs up. Thank you.
Maybe just a DB or two nudge down, Mark.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Great job getting through the mic check, one and all.
Yeah. And
For
I don't
those
know,
of
are we
you-
gonna start are we gonna start the show now, or should we wait until?
No. I
the
think we're
hour?
just going to talk for the next, it'll be 7 minutes. And then I'll officially start the show at the top of the hour. I'm kind of playing host because Alex is busy some days this week. So you're going to go through me. Sorry about that. In terms of housekeeping though, Guy, do you want to do the questions, or do you want, I could probably get by doing both if you have issues, but
No, I can go ahead and read for you. It might help lighten your load a little bit.
thank you. Yeah, it keeps me more present in trying to figure out what's going on where. And do we have all the who's cutting the show and the rest of that solved, or do we need to address that as well?
Yeah, I have host.
Okay, so Mickey's going to do that. Great. Everything else seems to be. For those of you on YouTube who don't normally watch office hours this early, we normally come on at the top of the hour. But because of some logistics, you got to watch our famous mic checks. And we do that every single morning.
Are you on Wi-Fi, Bill?
Yeah, exactly. Are you on Wi-Fi, Bill? Any chance?
You might have just frozen.
Mickey's been breaking up for me. So we must, your internet connection is unstable, just popped up on my screen.
Yeah,
everybody's breaking up
Chance
for
you're on
me.
Wi-Fi?
No, it's not. I'm on Ethernet. So there must be something going on in the neighborhood. My normal, very reliable and rock solid fiber line must have some issues at the central office. So I'm sorry about that. Hopefully it'll clear itself up.
If Bill starts to freeze up, what, Guy? Can you,
Yeah, let's Guy,
a-
you grab the con if that happens to me, and then I'll try to completely log out and log back in and see if a fresh connection helps.
Bill,
Sounds
can you
good.
check in the settings in the stats window what the packet loss and jitter is?
Yeah, let
Would
me
be
take a
interesting to
look.
see if it's actually resembled in there.
Well, let's take a look. Preferences, statistics, and it is saying to me, I need to go to my video things. Send 48 milliseconds, packet loss 0%, and then 0.02% on receive. So and then now it's down to 0. So doesn't look like it's a big deal. My send seems to be rock solid, 1920, 1080, 30 frames a second.
Can you
If
check
you
on
just-
audio?
Let's take a look at audio, and audio is saying 24 kilohertz, 2448 kilohertz, 5 milliseconds jitter, latency 38 milliseconds, nothing outside of what I would normally expect. No packet loss on either.
You
reading.
seem normal now, but if you keep an eye on that little bar graph to the left of your name in the lower left-hand corner, if it turns yellow, then take a look at the statistics. If it turns red, really take a look at the statistics.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Hopefully it was something that it was just goofy in their computer and it's settled now. Stuart, do you have something you want to chat about before we get going?
Yeah, Bill, have you tried, if you're on Windows, have you tried turning off Windows Update? Because it tends to use bandwidth in the background all the time.
I'm not. I'm on a 16-inch MacBook Pro, so that's not what it is. There must be something in the neighborhood. They're always doing construction or something there. Again, for those of you who haven't been here before the show starts, and we're about 4 minutes away from the official start, if you don't know about the process of asking questions, I'm going to go through that at the top of the show, but I'll just let you know that we have only one topic today. This is general questions from the top to the bottom of the show. So we have a decent group now, and I'm hoping that as we discuss things, there will be more questions that come in because we'll be covering 2 hours with Q&A. Was that a hand raised, Guy, or are you just talking to the kids? Oh, you're putting your glasses on.
Trying to clean these things, so I was doing a little misty, and then wipe.
Personal maintenance.
Yeah, these get a little, I don't know, sticky or something. I don't know. They're clear now, ready to read.
And Stuart, it's good to have you back. You've been gone for a while. How did your work-related stuff go?
I hate mornings. I've always hated mornings. I still hate mornings. Why do people schedule things to start at 9 o'clock in the morning instead of before or after peak hour? Do a breakfast. Do a breakfast for the crew. Everybody be happy. They'll start work. And there is stories to tell on people who aren't organized, but I'll worry about that another day.
Fair enough. Anything in technology that somebody's run across in general as we go through these last just couple of minutes? I'm thinking just to inspire. We got close to 20 questions this morning, so we're probably going to be fine for the show.
Yes, I have found when putting auto poles up, make sure you get the levelers to go on top of them. Other than that, they're a pain in the neck to get straight.
I'm going to hope that you didn't have anything heavy and valuable on your auto pole when you discovered that lesson.
No. Studio C is erecting right now. I've got the truss up and the 2 auto poles.
Nice. As you know, I have all sorts of auto poles in my office here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going across the ceiling, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's 6 going floor to ceiling.
Do you have the levelers on them?
Yeah.
Can you show us, Bill?
Not right now, because I was so busy this morning. I did not turn the wide shot on, and I don't think I'm going to have time to do that because we're 1 minute away from going. And so, sorry, if you ask me on Wednesday when I'm back to do this again, I will set up that camera so you can get the wide shot of the auto poles.
Okay, it's a deal.
Okay, we're close here. Oh, that's good. I'm learning little things from this point of view. And I'm seeing 6:59, so we're getting close. So for those of you who are tuning in at the top of the hour, welcome to Office Hours. Normally, Alex Lindsay is here welcoming you into the show, but Alex is on production sometimes this week, so I'm going to be sitting in and hosting for him. If you don't know how Office Hours work, basically what we do is we answer your questions. We have a process for you online going through, and if you're coming in via YouTube, as many people here are, you'll find a little link at the bottom that takes you to a thing called Mukana. So if you go to chat there, the YouTube chat will have a link to Mukana. You get to Mukana chat. When you're in Mukana, that is what we use to drive the topics and the amount of time we spend dealing with those topics here on the show. So basically, once you're in Mukana, your responsibility as producers of the show is basically to put in questions and then vote those questions up and down. The questions that get the most votes are what we deal with first and longest. So your votes are incredibly important for that. And basically, you have access here to thousands of years of experience represented by the people you see in the boxes on your screen. There's all sorts of folks who have all sorts of experience in many, many, many different areas of production, digital infrastructure, web stuff. And so if you're having trouble, this is a great place to come and get that discussed. And hopefully we answer questions and solve problems in the real world for people every morning. We're going to go for full 2 hours today. There is no second hour topic. Normally during the show, we have the first hour of Q&A, and then after that, the second hour is focused on a specific area of technology, and it varies widely. We might be talking about directing one day, and we might be talking about lighting the next day. Often there is a theme that will be published ahead of time, and if you sign up and go through the process and become part of the Office Hours family, you'll get an email every morning explaining what we're going to be talking about, the topics that we're going to be covering, and the rest of that. So that kind of is the preamble to how everything runs around here. And this is how it works, because Guy is about to ask us our first question, and we'll start the discussion. Guy, take it away.
All righty. Good morning. First one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. With 2 Portal TVs connected to an Atem Mini Pro, how do you prevent audio feedback looping?
Ooh, this is one for our audio people. And thankfully, Mickey raises his hand immediately and makes me feel better. Go ahead, Mickey.
If you don't need to use the HDMI, the Portal microphones, then go into your ATEM settings. There is a mixer, page within the ATEM software control, and mute those HDMI inputs.
The more I spend time with Mickey, and we watched him do it live, if you were in early today, helping Gudrun figure out a MixPre 2, I think it was, and it's a fascinating process. These devices are very sophisticated, and it required a lot of menu diving through to get to exactly how to set it up right so that feedback and different problems are eliminated. Go ahead, Courtney, you want to add something on this?
Well, it's even easier. You don't even need the software. Just look on the Atem Mini, and there's an on and an off button above each input, and just hit off. on those two inputs.
So if you have multiple signals coming in, there you go. I think that takes care of it. So let's move on to the next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend and fellow panelist from Reutlingen, Germany. Jonas Doddles asks, what do you use to get paid by international clients? PayPal or something else?
Ooh, this is an interesting question because the whole world of finance is getting changed substantially. I know a lot of people do work from here with people all around the world. So let's start. Mickey had his hand up first, and we'll go to Jeffrey and then Paul.
Yeah, on my end, and I'm sure it varies from country to country or even state to state. It's easier for tax purposes to just do a wire transfer.
Yeah, I totally agree. A wire transfer is what I do. I do PayPal if nothing, if they can't do the wire transfer. But wire transfer is easiest and actually cheaper than PayPal because PayPal's like 2.9% of whatever you get.
Paul, do you want to pop in on this?
Yeah, I would use Dogecoin. No, I'm just kidding. I'd use, what about Zelle or Venmo? Do they work internationally?
It's been interesting because the big banks have run after PayPal's success and seeing how much money I think they were making. We do have these things, and I think Zelle is that Bank of America's mobile. No, Greg's shaking his head. So those are usually pretty large financial circumstances run by either brokerages or banks. I think, no, they're all trying to get into this micro payments space. Go ahead, Greg.
I wasn't able to make either of those work from outside the U.S.
Okay, so Greg is in Finland or Norway. So some of the international things, and I think this is going to kind of go on a country by country basis. The one thing I would suggest, make sure the plumbing is right. I remember there was a great moment in my career when one of my largest clients put me on ACH auto payment rather than having to get a physical check. We were doing bigger and bigger jobs, and I was uncomfortable with the size of the checks coming in, and getting it plumbed directly into my account so I could receive those funds electronically was a huge plus. Let's go back to Mickey and then Courtney again. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely talk to your accounting department or your accountant. They would know what would be best for you financially.
Absolutely. And Courtney?
Yeah, I use PayPal for amounts less than $100 because then the PayPal hit of 2.9 or 3.5%, depending upon whether it's international exchange or not, is not as hard. But I always worry about giving my banking information, account number and transfer number. Whose phone is that? Not mine. Over to a company in a foreign country. That always makes me nervous. Has anyone else had qualms about doing that?
Interesting. Jeffrey has his hand up, and then we'll go to Stuart after that. Go, Jeffrey.
One other thing about PayPal is they accept, because sometimes I have clients that pay through a credit card or their account, which is basically a credit card. And so I can accept credit cards through PayPal. That's where I would get that. And I can't do a bank wire from that situation.
Do you use the little dongle on your phone to swipe or something like that? Or do you just have them punch in numbers and send them invoices?
Oh, I send them an invoice. On PayPal, I send them an invoice, and then they just pay back through PayPal. On the bank wire, I send them my routing number and my account number, and then they do the wire transfer. It's only, for me, it's $25 for the transfer.
Yeah. Interestingly, I used to do a lot of voice work for the Bureau of Land Management, one of the government agencies. And if I was doing revisions on scripts, and I charge pretty modestly for those, they actually wanted me to bill them via credit card. I would send them a little Visa invoice and they would pay that way. I think it made their government accounting easier.
And it's actually called a P card for businesses instead of a credit card.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to Stuart, then JJ. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Jim Weingart at BKW in Phoenix, Arizona, for my agent for that. For this PayPal tip, instead of sending it as a receipt or an invoice, do send money to friend, and you will get a far smaller hit on your account. You'll lose less in the transaction than you will if you're doing it as a commercial transaction.
Oh. Yeah, I got a little hit there on Wi-Fi or whatever it is. JJ and then Greg. Curta, go ahead, JJ.
Jonas is the one that asked the question, and I'm pretty sure that he uses Gumroad. And what was mentioned for those of folks in at YouTube, Ken Jordan, one of our resident experts here, uses Stripe. So Stripe.com is what he uses for his online web transactions.
This is a good conversation because there's all sorts of different processes around the world. We are international. Really helps to kind of know some of these names and who people trust. Go ahead, Paul Wallace, then Greg, and then Schy.
Yeah, Greg, Curta, have you tried using a VPN into like Wells Fargo or into, Venmo?
I would imagine that
solve
won't
it.
work because if they can't determine who you are, they're not going to let you into the banking system.
Okay, I got
That's
you.
my guess. I think VPNs kill transactions like that. Greg, did you have a note on that?
Yeah, I agree. Well, no, most of the vast majority of Europe is completely electronic. They're totally paperless. Bank to bank transfers are a daily. I mean, it's nothing. Okay, my bank account is tied to my personal identity number. By the way, so there's very little fear of identity theft and stuff like that over here. Nobody's worried about that. That's not the issue. They're more interested in convenience. I mean, everything comes in and out of my bank account automatically, has for years. I have never seen one problem. The one time there was a problem and somebody overcharged me, they redeposited it the next day. So nice. It's really, really very straight. So I wouldn't be afraid of the straight bank transfer.
Okay, Jonas Dattel's next, then Schy, and then I think we'll move on after that.
One quick note on PayPal for friends and family. Other than I personally think it would be strange if I advise a client to do that, because PayPal will warn you to not use that. PayPal will freak out if there are multiple thousands of euros coming through PayPal. And if you have a business account, I'll take the 3% hit, but I don't like sending out a PayPal invoice.
And that may be a fine print, the business account, personal account. There may be laws somewhere that you're working. So I think we'll always advise everybody to check the terms of your agreement. Schy, go ahead real quick and then we'll move on.
Yes, as Matt in the kitchen is trying to understand the economic side of this adventure, these are questions that I'm also asking. I'm wondering if this would be a second hour opportunity, because the nuances that are coming up, especially since we're going global and we haven't even discussed the Asia, if going that direction. So
yeah, actually, I think that's a really good idea. So I hope somebody is listening and writes this down in second hour. So
I will put that in the second hour.
How to get paid in the modern era.
What would it be called? Economic transfer?
Well, funds transfer, global billing, things like that, I think would be good hashtag kind of things, because we're all moving into this space, like it or not. It's as easy to work for somebody in Jonas's neighborhood as it is to work for somebody down the street for me. That's the new digital age that we're in. Paul, do you have a last comment? Well, no,
yeah,
Paul, and then
final
Peter,
comment. I'll make it really quick. Okay. Greg, maybe find a friend and remote PC into their PC in the US. You have all these friends here.
I don't need to do any of that, Paul.
Okay,
those are extra steps, extra hassle for me. I can do a straight bank transfer, but the rates are low from here anyway. So
there you go. Let's finish it up with Peter. A quick comment from Peter, and then we'll move on.
Well, just following on the Jonas's comment, and I've looked at the code. Just be careful, friends and family. I've looked at the code on the banking systems. If you trip more than $10,000, or actually $9,999 US, if you hit the $10,000 mark, you will get really close scrutiny by the feds. Really,
I had actually heard that number dropped. I had heard for decades that at $10,000 more, and they're really looking at you because only people who are scofflaws.
It's stair steps at starting at $5,000, but
okay.
$5,000 is too easy to spend these days. But it's not scofflaws, actually, is what they're worried about. They're worried about drug money.
Yeah, well, that was a sober cut I was saying, for anything nefarious that isn't above board transactions. All right, let's move ahead. Go ahead, Guy, and let's get to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Schy Gleason in Seattle. Who would like to workshop with Matt in the kitchen moving into a cloud-based solution for shows 7 and 8?
Ooh, it's a call for help and people who might be interested in joining the Mad in the Kitchen craziness. Go ahead, Jim, talk about that, or are you raising your hand to volunteer?
Just raising my hand to volunteer. Happy to help.
Okay. And Jonas, you've been involved in this. I know the last time I watched Mad in the Kitchen yesterday and saw you in there.
Totally. I think if a few people would like to do that, I think we have a nice group here in office hours that should be able to pull it off.
I will say
Run a
it's
bit, by
coming
the way.
along really fast. I watched yesterday. I hadn't watched in a couple of weeks, and the show is tightening up visibly and paying attention. So great. Jeffrey, do you have a thought on that?
First of all, what do you need? And second of all, how do you want to organize that so we know what our roles are?
And third of all, D, all of the above. Because that's exactly the question. A lot of magic has happened there with JJ and Kevin and Alex and now Nate and then Aaron. And a lot of magic continues to happen that I am unaware of. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not unaware. It's just they do magical things. And then, as Bill has observed, now there's 3 shows happening. And that's where JJ is going to help me define some of this question. I needing to find out these questions, but Alex is saying he's getting very busy with that equipment and we want to do season 2. What and where and how is that going to happen? So JJ, help me.
So for those of you who don't, go ahead, JJ. You finish up.
I'd hope to clarify for Jeff. So as we've seen the progression of figuring out what the show was going to be, what it could look like, and the various things we've baited, which is the beta on Zoom, and the sponsorship we've received within the office hours community, which has been enormous and constantly doubling. It's been wonderful. So now trying to figure out how to transition from a static studio into the on Zoom and an entirely cloud-based interface, which Guy has been working at perfecting with Jonas's help in their own ways. So now taking this show that's been a concept and moving that concept a little further forward.
And it's really been fascinating watching.
We have right now a Discord channel that anyone who's would love to help us with that conversation after these hours, please hit me up for a Discord invite and I'll send you that. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just mentioning it really been interesting to see it evolve, because the only model that was out there is the traditional television cooking shows in the beginning. And Madeline Smith, for those who don't know her, came out of producing for The Daily Show and other top tier television things that were broadcast. So it's been interesting to see her and the crew and everybody try to reinvent a form that is in a different thing now. It's not broadcast television anymore, and it's not what you would see on the Today Show. There's this incredible group of people behind the scenes who are not just watching the show, which is the traditional television form, but they're also helping to make the show in real time. And it's really been interesting to watch this thing develop over time. Guy, do you have a comment before we go back to Schy?
Yeah, right now we're talking about 2 separate things, I believe. One is on Zoom, which is Zoom, and the other one is a show that is going to YouTube. So I think we need to figure out where we're going to go in that regard first, because otherwise it's a lot of production time trying to figure out what the contribution method is to bring in the feeds. So currently there's, I believe, 9 or 10 Zoom rooms that are physical PCs at Alex's facility. So we can duplicate that in the cloud, no problem. That part to grab the contributors and grab their audio and ISO, each audio piece is no problem. Then deciding on a switcher, which might be most likely vMix, Livestream Studio, and I think that's it. I don't think there's any other contenders. The challenge really is the audio, which Alex has a BSS 806, which is a very impressive piece of kit. So routing the audio, if you saw Tucker's diagram and how they're able to drop Unity comms and talk to each individual, is something interesting. Stream Voodoo is something that I discovered within the last couple of days that may change things. Very, very, very low latency, high quality, up to 4K, less than 500 milliseconds, very, very pristine image at 10 megabits a second. Super impressed. For those of you that are listening, you might want to check it out, sign up for a demo of it. It will knock your socks off. So that's another possibility for contribution. So over to Schy to figure out what to do next, or Courtney, whoever's.
Well, is it me? do I get?
Yeah, go ahead, Schy, and then we'll
well,
talk Courtney
again,
after that.
and again, this is not a me thing. This is a we thing, and that people are doing amazing things behind the scene, and that Gudrun is learning English as in a matter of months. The ripple effect of what is going on is magical. And so, Jeffrey, do we do it all in vMix? Where do the different portals came in? And Guy, that you say the heavy lifting of, oh, well, it's just a matter of doing this. And of course we can do that in the cloud. You continue to just show up with these truckloads of amazing things that it's like, I'm very grateful to be a part of all of this journey. And Courtney's going to finish it with a voice.
Well, Schy, I think you're inventing a whole new genre of international synchronized cooking. And I think we should try for the Olympics next year.
Only if you can julienne all of your vegetables to look like swimmers in a synchronized swimming pool. That's my goal here. All right, let's move on. We're going to sneak to the next question. Go ahead, Guy.
Next one's coming in from Andrew in London, UK. Do you have any recommendation for a beginner audio mixer for home use? I'm trying to help a friend who wants something for podcasting, but also something he can connect 1 or 2 instruments plus microphone to for music recording at home.
Boy, all the manufacturers are coming out with their new low cost. I mean, I've seen more of them that says for podcasting than I ever had before. Greg, do you have thoughts on which ones might be useful?
You know, I've always been pretty partial to the Yamaha MG series. It's nothing, it's not new, but these things are tanks, and they work and they work and they work. They sound good. It's got effects. It's got USB connectivity. For me, they're very inexpensive. They're easy to work. I would probably, as a beginner, I would stay away from a digital mixer. I would go with an analog till you figure out how things work. But I really like this the Yamaha series. I'll put a link.
Okay, so look in kind of for the link. Tommy Chance is next, and then JJ McKenna, and then we'll go to Jeffrey.
If you want to step up a little bit, I mean, the Yamaha is great. I echo what Greg says about getting something with a name on it. I've always been a fan of Alan Heath. They have a nice one as well. But one thing to consider is USB connectivity that might make things a little bit simpler. So that's just my 2 cents on the matter.
JJ? JJ has
for the beginner,
aid.
the Behringer, the Behringer Xenix 302, which is exactly that. 1 or 2 instruments, and it's really for the very, very beginner. These are great.
Okay, we're going to go to Jeffrey and then finish up with Mickey. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I got two things here. First of all, this is one that's been around forever. I started podcasting on this one. This is the Multimix 8. They have now the USB flavor. I actually have a FireWire version of this one. But if you're bringing in instruments, the thing about this is it not only does mic, but it also does line, and it has an insert option for it. And usually under $200, you get a great solid piece of mixing console right there. And of course, the USB goes right in. The other one, Monoprice, has a mixer. Now you got to watch out for this mixing board because some of them do USB in and out, but the older ones only accept USB in. So, but if you're buying them new from Monoprice, then you should be able to get the latest version of that. Both of those mixers are the first one's under $200. I think this is under $100. And of course, they work with instruments really well.
Mickey, then Stuart. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to second what Greg mentioned about going with an analog board, because if you really, for a beginner, if you really want to learn signal flow, it would be, you can pick up a lot more if you started something analog. And I will second what Greg recommended, which is the Yamaha MG line, rock solid mixer, very reliable. It has 1 knob compression if you need that, so you can start learning about compression as well and how it affects signals. But yeah, start off with something analog.
And Stuart to wrap things up.
Yeah, a third voice for saying start off with an analog mixer, but just one reminder, there's a little bit of a gotcha with some of the USB mixers. If you're using the tape in, tape out function, sometimes that works in parallel to the USB out, and you can use one or the other. So the Behringer mixer that's sitting behind me, at the moment it's using USB out to feed vMix for this microphone to be heard, but if I hook anything up into tape out, the USB output is cancelled.
That's good warning. So now you know one of the reasons that things can be a little confusing in audio. Plug one thing in, another thing stops. That's not very intuitive. Guy, let's sneak on to, I'm sorry, Paul Wallace. Paul, do you
I
have
would
a last comment?
recommend the, thank you. I'd recommend the Zoom L8 mixer. Jan Landy recommended it to me. It's done pretty well, and it has a great input for a cell phone if you want to use the thing. I don't know, Jeffrey, what do you think about the Zoom L8?
I think it's a decent mixer, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so now you have some options out there, and good luck with your new podcast. Let's move on. Go ahead, Guy.
All right, next one is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What should you not buy in advance of Apple's WWDC, and what are you expecting?
The famous Apple is going to have a presentation. We embargo all things because there's nothing worse than putting in your order, as I did once upon a time, for a brand new Apple laptop because I had a shoot in California and I needed to replace my laptop. And then literally 5 days later, they came out with new models that were the same price and much better. I don't regret that too much after that. Anybody else have any ideas about what Apple might be doing at WWDC? And for those of you who don't commonly understand, WWDC is their developers conference. It's a worldwide developers conference. It has become something where Apple occasionally announces new technology, new products, new innovations. But just as much, it is when they bring their developer community together. It used to be up in Cupertino, but now it's virtual. And they have days and days of seminars about how the internals of Apple technology works for the people who are building the software for it. Go ahead, Charles, and then Paul.
Aside from the new iPad Pro, I wouldn't buy anything if I really, really could hold off. Just be a little bit of patient. Do what you can with what you have, unless you have a project right now that's just going to pay for it. But if you can hold off, just wait. We never know what Apple's going to bring, and it's always a surprise. And a lot of us have been waiting for the more powerful Apple chip Pro devices, let's say like the iMac Pros, or let's say like a Mac Pro, or like the new laptops. So I'm in that boat myself. I'm waiting to see so I can replace all my Intel machines. I have 3 of them that are screaming right now that I'm eagerly waiting to replace. So yeah, if you can hold off, yeah.
Well, everybody, it's no big secret that the Apple these M series chips. The M1 has been kind of transformative because everybody was wowed by how much extra performance they have, but they only put it into their base level machines. And I think it's been a normal anticipation that they were going to do something pro, whether they rev the chip to an M2 or an M1B or who knows, that's Apple. That whatever they do, if it has the same kind of performance jump that we saw from the packages before the M series to Apple's new in-house silicon, it could be transformative. So everybody's, I think, a little scared. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So WWDC is meant for the software, not as much the hardware. In fact, they've been doing more events throughout the year to show off the new phones, the new computers. And I think last year they didn't talk about anything new product-wise, but a lot of rumors on the iOS, where the next version of iOS, which would be iOS 15, and of course the features that come in there. So I'm guessing things like making the AirTags work a lot better, things like LiDAR support maybe in other devices. That type of stuff will be probably announced at WWDC with a lower end. If they show off anything, it'll be maybe one piece of hardware that could be coming out.
Peter?
Yeah, I'll second what Jeffrey just said, is that WWDC is aimed more at the developer. It truly is a developers conference. They have not historically announced any new hardware per se at that conference. However, if 2020 hindsight is a good example of, if you look at their WWDC conferences, like the various sessions on graphics over the last several years, they, for all practical purposes, telegraphed their intention to go to M1 when they started to deploy Metal and really push the developers to Metal. They really telegraphed what they were up to at that point. So while there's no new hardware to worry about, I mean, that will come in the fall. That will be the next major thing in the fall. Pay attention to what they're saying, telling the software developers, because that will telegraph their intent.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's one of those things that WWDC gives you those hints. And I know Alex Golnar, our friend who's here on the panel often, has been very deep into looking at the deep sessions to try to get some kind of a glimmer, a guess as to where Apple may be going in terms of hardware, but it's not the place. Originally, they have announced hardware at NAB, and NAB has, of course, it was postponed from this year, from back in April. It's going to be a virtual show in October, so there may or may not be some resonance to looking for their new M series production stuff then, or not. Who knows? Don't bet on it. Let's do Paul and then Courtney to finish up.
Okay, according to Scoble's article, which John Preto read, and I'd be interested in John's comments after mine if that's possible. Don't buy a holodeck, don't buy a car.
In the Apple holodeck. Courtney, go ahead, and then John, you can weigh in if you'd like.
I disagree somewhat. They do have to announce hardware sometimes at WWDC, especially if there's an architecture change coming in the hardware, because the developers have to know about the architecture change to deal with writing software for it, and they can't keep the lid on it, even though they make everybody sign a non-disclosure agreement. That many developers worldwide, you can't keep a secret like that, so they have to go ahead and announce a lot of hardware just because they know it's going to leak out anyway. So
yeah, didn't the new Mac Pro, weren't we hearing about some of that and Infinity Fabric and those things that coders are going to have to understand that FGPU is going to, the field programmable GPU is going to have, they got to start thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. A lot of times people scour through the code anytime they make a software change, an update in a new version of the operating system. People scour through that for hints into upcoming hardware, because of course Apple has to make sure that their operating system will work with the new hardware before they release the new hardware. So that's how a lot of these rumors start, because people will scour through the code of the new operating system and see about upcoming stuff, things addressing things that have never been heard of before in the software.
Yeah, and I've always thought, this is just as an outside observer, that Apple is not unaware of the fact that while many corporations and things like that are on fiscal year budgets, some of them do calendar year, and so there's a lot of spending that takes place at the beginning of a new year. So the idea that they might come out with M1 or M2 or whatever it will be, machines that are more professional, it wouldn't shock me if an October talk about those things were possible. But
and Apple pulled out of NAB a decade ago.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole different thing. I think Apple again correctly saw that they could connect with more people for less cost. I don't think the cost was a factor by doing it virtual. I think they could easily see that this idea of virtual broadcasting through the internet was really gonna hit. And that's what they did. They just said, we're going to come from Cupertino directly into our customers and ask them to log on and watch. And they certainly did in millions. So, and then you're not sharing stage time with anybody else. And, the guy next door in the next booth has his audio turned up so nobody can hear your presentation. There, the NAB would have downsides to it in terms of a pure public relations, get it out there. And companies like Apple and Blackmagic, Grant's done the same thing fabulously. That direct line of communication to your most loyal people and letting everybody else watch, that turned out to be a very powerful marketing thing. I think we threw all of those. Let's dig on to the next question. Oh, we got a lot of them, so we're going to have to start picking up the pace a little bit here.
Next one's coming in from Gabriele Lacerdo in Milan, Italy. I just discovered my Mac Mini M1 does not detect a second USB-C display if the Mac Mini is already connected to a Dante AVIO USB-C. Everything works fine if I disconnect the Dante AVIO or if I connect it to a USB-A port. Is that normal?
Who has the Mac Mini M1s out here who can help her? Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'm running USB-C right now, and I'm running HDMI. No problem. Using
So
the
what, do you
same
have two
monitor that
displays?
Guy
Because
has.
she was asking specifically about a second USB-C display.
Well, I have a second virtual display. Isn't that what you'd call it, Guy? On the 43
No, I don't think so.
inch?
I think this is actually two displays hooked into USB-C ports. Jonas, do you have a?
My guess is since the Mac Mini M1 is limited to a specific number of display outputs, that the AVIO, when not connected after the second one, tries to like access a thing that normally is for display outputs. And that's why if you connect your display after that, it already is like locked.
So the order of attachment might have some impact on this. So one thing that Gabrielle could do is try booting with the other monitor first and then add the original one.
At the AVIO.
Peter, you have?
I was just going to say two things is you were randomly turning red on your bars on the lower left, but the M1 is notoriously finicky in this space. I mean, it is very order dependent, and I have proven that to myself many times, depending on which order I attach things to my M1, whether they come up or not.
Interesting.
And it's gotten myself, fortunately I still have my hair, but I could pull the hair out at this point.
This is taking me back to the days of SCSI drives, where if you didn't get the order right and the cable lengths exactly right, drives would disappear.
I'll take it back farther than that. Okay. To something called bus and tag.
Courtney and then Jeffrey. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you'll notice from the name of it, although you may only be using the Dante interface for audio, it's a Dante AVIO. It's audio video input and output, because they are going to be delving into video now over the same Dante network soon, and they've got stuff in development for that. And so that may be taking up a video channel. And so since the Mac Mini is limited to only 2, if you've got a USB-C monitor in addition to an HDMI monitor, there's your 2, and you plug in the Dante AVIO. It tries to do 3, and so it has to disable one of the monitors to allow the third video channel.
That makes a lot of sense. Jeffrey?
Yeah, in the AVIO, if you can disable the video, if you're not using the video, do that. But on the monitor, if the monitor actually has sound to it, that might be trying to create another sound channel. And that might be where things are starting to really glitch up in the system. So if you can go to the monitor, either use a monitor without a sound in it, or disable the sound options inside your monitor, you might have a better chance of getting that connected.
Okay, hopefully that helps. Let's move on to the next question, because we now have a bunch stacked up.
Next one's coming in from Chris Royston in Round Rock, Texas. Can I access the multiview on an ATEM Extreme ISO through the computer or only through one of the HDMI outs?
Who uses the Extreme ISO on multiple monitors? Peter Sargent does. Go ahead.
The answer is you can only access it through one of the 2 HDMI outs. However, what I do is I take one of those 2 and send it back in through a capture card, or a capture dongle in this case, and then use QuickTime to display it on my computer.
Excellent, Chris.
So that's a good way to solve.
Oops, Chris, hopefully that helps and solves the problem. Let's move on to the next question.
Next one's from our friend John Barker in Sweden. When Blackmagic Design reimagined the 4K lineup of ATEM switchers, what features would you like to see packed in?
Ooh, we could talk about this for a long time. Greg Curta has his hand up first. Go ahead.
I love the idea of the ATEM. I think it's very cool. I don't have one, and I won't have one until balanced audio is included.
You don't like professional audio on 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter small connectors?
Well, you said 2 things that don't go together: professional audio and small connector.
3.5 millimeters. Yeah, it is interesting. I can see the space issue. I mean, a big XLR or a 1/4 inch, even a quarter inch plug.
I think it's more than that. I think that if they included balanced audio in and out, they would have trouble selling their higher end ATEMs.
Interesting. Okay, Jonas, your thoughts, and then Courtney's.
To stay in the realm of audio, maybe have more than one bus, so you can't send monitor bus out to an output and not only program audio.
Okay, Courtney.
Well, the 4K, the higher above the minis, they all have balanced audio inputs. So,
It's not like they're not used to building it.
Okay. So you're saying that the minis are not 4K. Anything 4K and above it are the other line.
Yeah, they all.
Oh, I
have
didn't know that.
analog
Okay, my error.
Tommy, Chance, you want to get in on?
Yeah, one thing I'm missing on mine is the same thing that the minis has, is with being able to convert all the different signals rather than having to match every signal from every camera being the same.
So you're saying
that's my thumb.
Essentially the fact that it does what a time-based corrector used to do, and you could throw any video input at it and it turns it into a signal that it can deal with and send out as an HDMI.
Correct.
Yeah, that was kind of, having, as somebody who had dealt with a lot of different machines, trying to get them all in the same, marching to the same drummer, so to speak, that was nice. And more equipment seems to be smart enough to do that, so you don't have to do quite as much troubleshooting. All right, let's move on. Next question.
Next one's from Ron in Montana. I am planning to purchase a microphone, but I do not own any other audio gear. Please explain what direction I should go on a small budget.
Ooh, this is going to be an interesting one. And Mickey is doing the traditional office hours, it depends thing, only because there are a lot of connection schemas, I guess, for lack of a better term, unbalanced versus balanced. You've got 12 or 15 different types of connectors that carry audio into any piece of equipment. On top of that, you've got the big divide between unbalanced consumer level stuff and balanced professional level stuff, which operate at different requirements. So it gets to be confusing. And so let's go through the panel and get a couple of people to deconfuse it a little bit. We're going to start with Greg and go to Stuart, then Mickey, and then Schy.
Well, I think it's mostly depends on a use case. What are you gonna do with this? What's your goal? There are, as you say, there are just so many options that it's very difficult to say one mic. So without further information, I really couldn't give much more advice.
Yeah, it does get tough because that is a specialist game. The reason that manufacturers make 10,000 different microphones is they all have their own little nuances and things like that. And so there is not one device that rules them all generally in this. Plus, then you've got this technology stuff. Stuart, you're next, then Mickey.
I do not own any other audio gear. So you're a camera person. Rode video mic, Rode Go lapels.
Okay. That's what he uses, and that works at the simplest thing. Now, he has a camera as a recorder as the first stage, so he's got that taken care of. If you're going out directly to USB into a Zoom call, it's a different world than if you're going out into a PA on a stage for a band. So just understand that. Mickey, you're next. Help us.
Yeah. Just to build upon what Greg was saying, what are you trying to capture, and what is the situation for that? Capture. Like, are you recording music? Are you recording bands, instruments? Are you recording human speech, voice? What and what situation is it? The sit down interview? Is it like a walk and talk outside? Is there a narrative? There are a lot of different use cases for microphones, and so it would help. And maybe you want to ask another question to dive deeper into it.
Let's go to Schy, Jeffrey, and JJ, and that should fix that.
Brian Maddox of Office Hours from a year ago, as an audio engineer of decades, I guess, his quote was, just remember you're trying to get one sound from one location into the ears of another person. And so that's where what are you trying to do is what I'm supporting, but also it's that you're trying to get a sound from one location, from a mouth, or like you said, an instrument, into the ear of an audience someplace else. So that's the higher level.
Jeffrey, and then JJ.
Well, I'm going to complex it even more because we've been talking a lot of XLR solutions, but there's a ton of USB solutions out there that work just as well for what you're doing. So if you don't want to invest in a microphone, then a mixer, then an audio interface going into the computer, and you just want to have microphone into the computer or microphone into the iPhone, microphone into the Android, then you want to go for a USB solution. And there's several different companies out there. Low range, we've got companies like Mayono and Fafine that are you find on Amazon. Then I have IK Multimedia that has a whole ton of USB stuff. And then you get into the higher end stuff and companies like Shure and I just dropped a blank there.
Audio-Technica?
But other companies basically having the ability to switch XLR to USB. And so you have just even more information there. So it's really what you want to do with it.
JJ?
I was going to keep it really simple, but I just made it a little more complex because of Jeffrey. I know that at least 2 panelists on this show daily use this microphone, the Blue Yeti microphone. It's sub $200, and it's a great starter for this kind of environment. It has the ability to do both volume here on one device and has different settings for the patterns. But also, if the idea is to have multiple things in one device, the Zoom recorders, it's an all-in-one handheld recorder that if you want to use a recording device and a microphone all built into one thing, those also are just around the $200 mark, depending on the model you get. So that might help some of that question.
Good answers. And Ron, regardless, I mean, you've done exactly the right thing. You've come to a place and you've asked questions and you haven't been upset by the fact that you don't know much about it. That is the exact right place to start your learning from. So just keep coming back to office hours or places like this. Read as much as you can. There is a lot to learn, but you can do it if you just go step by step. So just take it easy. You'll get in there. Paul, I'm going to move on because we still got 20 questions and just over an hour and 10 minutes to get to them. So I don't want to dawdle too long. So Guy, let's move on.
Next one's coming in from panelist Stuart Fairweather of Melbourne, Australia. And it says, Pi, ! At Jonas, can I run PlayoutBee on a Pi 4 compute module with separate I/O board? And if so, can we use the NVMe device to boot and store videos?
Okay, Jonas, I'm gonna toss the ball directly to you.
Should be able to do that. At the moment, I focus on devices that are already built, since this is just a development kit. The same for the Jetson Nano. I have one, I haven't tested it yet, but all those devices are geared to hardware developers. And since I'm not currently working on building hardware, yes, it should work, but I haven't validated that specific platform.
It was Stuart's question, although he's going under Sith Lord Snark, and I think you're just a Sith Duke Snark at this point. Go ahead, Stuart, and you want to amplify that?
Yeah, I was mostly thinking about the NVMe part of the I/O board because the price for size of storage modules is much cheaper for like an NVMe or BGFF drive compared to very large, reliable SD cards, especially micro SD cards. So that was just the thought process.
If you mount it correctly, so the OS can see it, yeah, you can just replace in the settings where it where it plays from.
Okay, we got a thumbs up on that. Let's move on. Go ahead, Guy.
Greg Greckmeyer in Topping, Virginia asks, suggestions for accessing a church setup remotely for setup and maybe assistance during a service. The setup is an Atem Mini, a Beelink by Courtney, and a laptop. Audio mixer coming.
It's an interesting thing. So you want somebody to come on, I'm assuming, Greg, to kind of diagnose at a distance and talk you through it. How would one go about finding people who are capable of do that, other than maybe dropping something in the Mukana chat for the many people here who know what they're doing? Mickey, you have some suggestions?
Yeah, I would recommend switching your router to something that is capable of generating an L2TP tunnel, a VPN tunnel. That way you can log in using the public IP of the church and get into their network, essentially bring your machine into their network.
So this is, I think, going to be increasingly important as we go on. And this is probably why Alex has us doing 1 day a week or 1 day at least occasionally on computer networking, because this idea of remote driving and remote access, and more than anything, remote diagnostic, I think is going to become more and more a part of how we get things fixed going forward. Peter Sargent, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll go back 15 years ago where I used a pair of Linksys VPN routers to tie together my condo in Ottawa and my house in Round Rock, Texas, so that they all appeared on the same network. And that was important at the time because I was doing tech support for my college-age kids who were still back in Texas when I was in Ottawa. But it's exactly what Mickey said, was establish that kind of routing, and so everything appears in one place as far as the systems is concerned. It's not for the faint of heart, I will warn you. I mean, it's not hard, but you have to pay attention.
Not hard from somebody who is an expert in this stuff. And what is not hard for you is virtually impossible to accomplish for someone like me. But I get what you're saying. Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, there's some services that kind of simplify it, like Hamachi. You can have a Windows machine at the church site act as a gateway, essentially a VPN tunnel. Although, like, once you dive into that, might as well learn the full VPN stack.
Jonas?
An easier way would be, since you already have everything there, install something like TeamViewer and control the ATEM over just the ATEM software. It's not the ideal solution, but it's a solution that should work, especially since you want to control two PCs and an Atem Mini. That would be my suggestion, to get it working and not have to dive into VPNs and networking and talk to all the people to be able to open your router. I have been there, so.
Hopefully we've managed to make it easier for you. Let's go ahead and move on. Guy?
Next one's coming in from Alex Smith in Raleigh. I'm working with a high-profile client with an aging vMix setup. How on earth can I get them to upgrade without offending anyone? For example, recording multicorder drive is set to a Lexar 16 gigabyte flash drive.
This is a universal thing. And in fairness, I do this, I come at this from the editing side. There are plenty of absolutely superb editors I know who are still on Avids from 9 years ago. They've got something, it's working. They literally do not want to touch it because being a system engineer is not their passion. They want to do the job that the gear is doing, not try to be the fix-it guy. But that said, this is an era where this is important. So let's go to Stuart and then Mickey after that.
I just have to ask Alex, we need more detail. How in the heck did someone get it to record to a Lexar flash drive? I use more than that for 4 HD cameras just doing replays. It's like, that would be like a minute's worth of time.
Hey, it's 16 gigabytes.
I'm just stunned.
I'm reminded of my first hard drive, which was a Corvus that had a whopping 11 megabytes, and it was the size of a super light block. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Charles.
Yeah, I think you just have to be fully honest and transparent to the client and say, like, these are the capabilities of the facilities you're giving me. This is what it can do. This is what it cannot do. And if they request for something that the machine or machines aren't capable of, then just be honest. They're relying on you to be the technician, and you have to let them know what you can do with it.
Charles?
Yeah, I second everything that Mickey said. What we've done in the past, and I believe that Alex does the same, is they'll write an email and they'll explain, we highly advise against this. Letting them know in writing, we suggest this. These are the problems that could occur or could come from the system that you're using. That could be the catalyst for all of these faults down the line. If you choose to proceed with that system, we won't be held accountable for what you might want to choose to. Yeah, so it's a tricky situation. I've had a couple of clients like that. Usually after the first time it fails, they do figure out and they do take your advice. But usually if you can compare them to somebody else or to something else, they do pick up. But sometimes you just have to let them learn the hard way and just put everything in writing. Just make sure that everybody is on the same boat and that you understand each other. So if they do choose to proceed, it's covered.
Yeah. Jeffrey. Then Court.
I make it their idea. So in order to do that, you go up to the client and you basically say, so this is what we've been doing for the stream. What would you like to see have done for the stream? And then they give you ideas, and you kind of push the idea that, in order to do this, we're going to have to make some changes to the machine and possibly do a full upgrade. But I will also go with the very probably unpopular opinion on the panel, and is if it's not broke, don't fix it. If you don't need to add anything to what's being done right now, and there's no other need, then let it be for a while and let them run with it. Only if there's an actual need to do something else, or something's just failing and you're duct taping it together, then then just be very bold and say, we need to do this otherwise.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Jeffrey. If the hardest thing to do is get a corporate client that has locked into been using something for 10 or 20 years, well, not that long, but, a few years, if their need doesn't exceed the capabilities of their existing setup, there's no reason to change. And, you may run out of space on that Lexar 16 gigabyte, but that's an easy change. Just send them a 1 terabyte USB drive and tell them to unplug the Lexar and plug this in. You got more space. But changing, to a faster computer or different software, or if they're not running up against a brick wall and trying to do something that their current setup can't do, they're going to always be reluctant to change, because with change comes problems.
Mark Horner, go ahead.
Yeah, a bit tangential, but I'm severely reminded of as I work for a government agency. In 2017, we bought a TriCaster Mini HDI, I believe it was. That was 2017, and after 2 or 3 years, everything was moving to Windows 10. Everything had to be on Windows 10. There was no legacy back on Windows 7. That TriCaster could not be upgraded to Windows 10. So I guess the moral of the story from my point of view is, when you do adopt or go to something new, try and make it as future-proof as possible.
Yeah, I think we've all run into that, particularly as fast as everything about the digital industries are just moving so quickly. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I mean, now you just bring up the whole point about basically how long it takes, how long you need to have to write off your hardware and to what the refresh rate is. I mean, corporate entities and government entities have been dealing this for the last 70 years, and how fast they have to refresh their technology, because it does, a lot of it's driven by tax laws, but a lot of it's just driven by the fact that manufacturers don't update things after 3 or 4 years, and you're SOL.
Yeah, and things that used to cost tremendous amounts of money, and I'm thinking in the editing field, the TV station equipment where you'd buy a camera and it was $50,000 and you had to depreciate it over a long period of time. Now, a $2,000 Blackmagic camera can sometimes outperform those cameras that used to be huge amounts of money, and to take a 5-year depreciation on a $2,000 camera asset, it's just not the same game anymore, and you don't want to do that. Schy?
Well, just very quickly, I remember when the first HVX, 2000s or 200s camera came out, and people would buy them for a shoot and then literally be on eBay on Monday. And so they almost became a disposable item, similar to duct tape and the tape stock. Tape stock used to be
consumable.
Tape stock was more expensive than the camera. And so to flip that mindset of, again, back to that first question of, I want to capture audio. Well, okay, what is that piece of equipment going to do in that moment? And this consumer equipment that we're using now has a shelf life probably a lot less than some of the industrial stuff that Ari and Mickey Mole used to be putting out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sense to it. If it plugs into a wall and takes power, that's probably not a good idea. I think you're going to keep it for 20 years coming on. Let's move on. Next question, Guy.
Next one's coming in from Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, New York. I put 24-inch HDMI display in the search on B&H Photo and was horrified to see 371 results come up. What does the panel recommend for under $300? Do I want 16:9 or 16:10, IPS, LED, LCD?
So this is going to be an it depends. And I think Charles got there ahead of me, and then Tommy and Mickey all joined in. You really kind of have to know your use case, because the manufacturers for things, particularly IPS panels and what, used to be a monitor, we had these big CRTs and only a few companies made really good ones, and a lot of people made not so good ones, and they were for home use for watching TV, and that was all. And there was this big gulf. Now, boy, these panels are coming out, and it's really hard to figure out which brands really do pay attention to color accuracy and mountability and all the things that field users, somebody who's going to be using it in a professional circumstance. Alex always says it has to have an HDMI input, and it has to have a VESA mount on the back. And sometimes those basic things will tell you whether they're designing it for somebody to stick on the wall of their RV, or they're designing the same panel for use in a professional circumstance. But there's subtle signals. Go ahead, Peter. Weigh in
I was
on
going
this.
to say, one of the things to keep in mind is the panels themselves are only sourced from 2 or 3 places these days.
Yeah,
it's really the electronics that the manufacturer of the end device is going to do, and there you need your HDMI devices, your inputs. You need your VESA mounts, as Alex says. How it controls color correction is going to be in the circuitry, but not in the panel itself. So you got to, how much control you have is going to drive the cost up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just looking around me, and I realized that I don't have any of the old brands I spent most of my career working with. I'm not seeing Ikegami and Sony and those names that for me I'm producing for broadcast were solid for a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades. And now it's Apple and Kagoda. I have a Kagoda panel that's done really well for me here. And I hadn't heard of many of these names before, but they're doing pretty darn good stuff, and it's way more affordable. So if you do make a mistake, or if something goes wrong with it, you can just replace it by calling Amazon and getting it there in a day or two. Let's do Charles, and then Courtney can finish things up. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. So for me, the first thing that I would look for is the monitor going to be a GUI monitor, where you're just going to have like your buttons and everything like that, maybe scopes if you're doing color. Then you could actually probably find something that is less than that, and it'll be great. If you do need to have some color accuracy at that price range, at least get something that is correct at 709, Rec 709, which is just a standard that we've had forever, and we are moving past that now. But at least make sure that it covers 100% of 709, so that if you do deliver something to a client, you can be confident in what you delivered was what is supposed to be seen, at least creatively. If I was looking for something in that price range, I would go to ardings.com and see what they say. And a lot of the stuff that they suggest, it's actually the gaming monitors, which are in that price range. A lot of the technology for gaming monitors have gotten much better. So I would start there in that price range. As far as the size or ratio, it's up to you and the space that you have to work with.
Interesting. And that's from a colorist who does this every day. I will tell you that I never used and did not understand that triangular color gamut cloud image that is now something that I look at for every monitor I buy. It really puts a cloud of red, green, and blue and all the in between, and then it draws a triangle to say this monitor will cover this part of the Rec 709 gamut. At least being basically familiar with that lets me know if there's anything really squirrely about how that particular monitor tests out. So that's useful. Courtney, go ahead.
Well, in that price range, I'd say a few important points to look for is always look for an IPS panel always, and look for one that if it can do HDR, that's a plus. You're not going to get a color grading quality monitor for that price or anywhere near that price. So, and if you're not using it for that, you can certainly get a high quality, good quality monitor. And as was said earlier, the LCD panels themselves are, only made by a couple of different manufacturers. So the quality there doesn't change too much. Look for the power, and the backlighting does change considerably between, even though they're using the same panels, the backlights can be different. So look for one that has a local dimming, if you can find that. That'll give you a higher contrast ratio. And my pet peeve is don't buy a monitor that has capacitive touch controls on it. In other words, not physical buttons to set the menus and things like that, because you will hate that before long. And try and find one with at least 300 nits and preferably 500 nits of brightness.
We should have a whole second hour on just how some monitor people put controls on that are so difficult to use. It's like the menu I want to get to is 7 clicks to the right, 3 clicks in the center button, and then I have to use the 2 on the left side to go up and down. And then trying to get out of that back is like 6 more clicks. Some of those interfaces.
Capacitive touch buttons, you go just to arrange the angle of the monitor and you've changed 4 settings in 2 menus deep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a whole nother that discipline is how to give user control over things like that. I think that takes care of everybody. Let's move on to the next question.
Next one's coming in from fellow panelists, Greg Kurta in Steinkjer, Norway. Since Schy broke the ice with call to action, the remotes really need singers, male and especially female. Please jump in.
I think, Greg, go ahead, speak to it for a moment. Why not?
We have a really, really fun little community of musicians and technicians and graphic art people. It's a really, really good time, and we need you, especially ladies. We need you, ladies singers. So please, please, please. There are 147 of you out there. I can see that, plus the panel.
Well, so not lady singers, but overall people watching.
General audience, like general producers, let's say. So if any of you want to join us, please, 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 we could really, really use your help.
And I don't think this is the kind of thing where you need to be a skilled opera singer to participate. Literally, and we can't, it's like the Fight Club thing. In the remotes, we don't talk about what we're doing until we are ready to show it to the world. So I can't give you too much behind the scenes details other than to say it has been so much fun. The people have been fabulous to work with. And we're getting better results than I ever would have imagined possible because of the talent level of the people who have been involved with this. But there are a lot of circumstances where you just want a group of people to be able to sing in the background who can basically carry a tune. You do not have to be like at a level of, oh my gosh, that person sings like an angel, or a male opera singer who can reach the basso profundo level. It's just fun. And so if you can carry a tune and you want to join in, contact Greg Kurta or contact Greg here, or why am I forgetting?
Or just go to the remotes page. The remotes.
Yeah, go to the remotes page. And Victor, who's the band leader, will touch base with him. It's fun. All right, let's move on.
One quick thing. I just wanted to say, just remember that this is a volunteer amateur organization that is part of our family here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it has been.
That's what this is.
Super nice getting to know some of these people a little better, because you tend to be on Zooms with them more than you normally would. And it's just been, I don't know, I've enjoyed this as much as anything I've done during the year of lockdown. Seriously, this great people and a great spirit, and you can't mess up. You do your best, you try, and then some of these geniuses who are running things actually fix it for you. So that's great. All right, let's move on.
All right, next one's coming in from Tlaloc Miguel Lopez Watermelon in New York. For those of you who have ordered the new iPad, how do you plan to use the awesome new display in your production? Workflow Sidecar?
Yeah, I would think Sidecar would be, but Charles is our resident colorist who is really concerned with accuracy of signals passing through. And I know he's really interested in the new iPad. What is your current thinking, Charles?
Yeah. So my first thought is Sidecar is going to be the first thing that I'm going to connect it through. Hopefully, we do have an option to hardwire it, but I'm not too concerned about that. In my production workflow, the main thing that I need is I want to see how close it is to my Flanders Scientific, because if it's accurate to that, I can send it out to a client, reference my own, and then when I send files to them, I know they're looking at something that is very close to what I was looking at, which has been inherently a problem in color correcting in Hollywood, where you need to have everybody in the same room to look at the calibrated monitor. So this might be the first really, really good solution that we have, and it's coming for Apple. Now, at 1,000 nits and a peak of 1,600, the pro level monitor that we've used in the past is a Flanders Scientific XM310, and it's cheaper now at $25,000. And just up to like halfway through the pandemic, it could be ordered and you would have it in a couple of weeks. For the last 6 months, it's been on back order, which means there's a lot of productions going on that need HDR. So if Apple can come up with a product that can meet that 1,000 nit standard, which is for Netflix and Apple and Amazon and Hulu, that is P3 and pretty accurate, it's going to solve a lot of the issues for a lot of people, especially just as a quick reference. It's not going to replace a color grading monitor, but as a quick reference for most people that are in production, it's going to be a lifesaver. So we'll be able to send those out to clients and just have a good reference.
And I don't know how transformative people understand that is. Back in the days, calibrating monitors in every TV station, every production facility went in was a near religious thing. They had to be right, particularly working in NTSC, because you saw the disaster that you walk into a sports bar and there would be 14 TVs playing the same signal, and the grass was a different color on about a third of them. And it was like, oh my God, this is so far out of spec just as a consumer TV. And I do think that Apple's push, and it happened 6-7 years ago, to install a managed color pipeline. And I'm not picking on Apple particularly. There are color consistency things through there, but they have the most devices out there, which means that if you're working in that managed color system, you should be able to expect that your phone is going to look like your iPad. It's going to look like your Mac on your desktop. And so even just in that ecosystem, it is a little bit of a relaxation. If it looks decent to me and I send it to my client, we're not going to get that sports bar circumstance where they're going to pull it up and go, why are all the whites pink? That just doesn't happen anymore. And I've just taken some comfort in knowing that if it looks okay on my phone, it's going to look at least okay. Not at the level of detail that Charles is working towards at all, but at least I know I'm in the ballpark, which has been great as I send work out to clients, particularly if somebody says, that's our brand color and the pink or the blue looks a little odd. And you're going, well, look at it on your iPad. That's what most people are going to look at and is acceptable. And sometimes that solves the problem right there, because they were looking on it on a computer monitor from Dell or something like that was not at all balanced correctly. Charles wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah. So one thing, I was sitting in a session where we had the Sony $45,000 monitor. We had everything, and it was a beautiful suite. And the client would only approve things after they looked at it on their iPad Pro, because they knew their consumer base was going to take in the ad on their iPhones and iPads and stuff like that. So that was a very, very big thing. So if Apple can make that connection, and I know there's a lot of colorists that do have nice monitors and they do a last minute check on their iPad Pro, because if it can look good there, it can pretty much look good in a lot of places. So yeah.
This is the video equivalent of why you go into these recording studios back in the days of music being a huge thing. And even though they had massive well-balanced speakers. They threw it on these little Oratone cube speakers on the bridge of the mixing console, because that sounded like your AM car radio coming out, and you're trying to get to where people are actually going to hear it. And if there was some big booming bass note that you loved, well, it's gone by the time it gets to the Oratones. So maybe that's not the most important part of that mix. Mickey, do you want to toss in before we move on to the next subject?
Yeah, just exactly the same thing. Like with mixes, especially advertising mixes, we always have to do a last check on either like a pair of $20, $40 Logitech computer speakers, or I use airfoil on an iPhone and just listen through that.
Yeah, and sometimes it really surprises you, because you were hearing with all sorts of bass and you wanted that to sit on top, and then that stuff is gone suddenly when you toss it on the other one. You go, wow, that mix of the voice is too harsh because it's not being anyway, it gets into a long discussion, but having something you can rely on to watch your work back before it goes out to the public is something that makes everybody who produces any kind of content feel a whole lot more comfortable. Let's move on.
Next one's coming in from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. Why is it preferable for a panelist in Zoom to be sent back to attendee instead of just leaving the meeting?
Yeah, we have hands up, but I think it's just because they want to continue to watch the show. But Stuart, Mickey, Stuart.
Yeah, it's so that they can watch or listen to the show while they're driving or doing other things.
Yeah, I tend to watch the show. I take Sunday off just because my wife asked me if I could have one day, and we just have a nice relaxing day at home. But I usually don't watch it in real time, but I definitely go back because I just want to keep up with my friends and find out what was talked about, because I enjoy it. Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, if a panelist just leaves the meeting and they sign back in just to watch, they're going to be automatically be brought back into the panelist section. So sending them back to attendee will make sure that they can continue, watching the show without being in the panelist.
Yeah, I think that's particularly important, because I was a panelist in the morning once, and I came back on my phone. But I used the same credentials. I did not want to do that. I did not want to try to be a panelist from my phone. That would have been way too stressful. Let's move on. Go ahead, Guy.
Next one's from Alan Snyder in Cedar Rapids. So many employees moved to working from home during the pandemic. With company offices opening up and some requiring employees to come back into the office, what do you think the future of work from home will be?
Oh, there's a big question. Alex has notoriously said he doesn't think it's ever going back. And I don't think it's entirely going back either. I do think people are going to want to try to recapture what was before a certain pretty large segment. The question in my mind is, are they going to be satisfied with the way they used to do it now that they've done it this way? Now, some people, this will be more social rather than purely how their work goes. Maybe they're just tired of being at home and having to watch kids and do all the rest of the things, and they would like to get out at 8 o'clock in the morning and be in an office environment for a while. And I respect that. I mean, everybody has their own circumstances, but I do think there are going to be some changes that are going to persist, and some that'll probably move back. But let's see what everybody else says. Let's start with Peter, go to Stuart, and then Courtney. Peter, go ahead.
Well, I think the more interesting question is, what is this going to do to the structure of an office? I mean, there has been a huge push over the last 20 years to go to open landscape offices. And I'm already talking to some of my large government clients who are saying they can't have that level of density. If they go back to having people in a building, they can't have that level of density anymore. So they may actually be going back to offices, as in you walk into a 10 by 10 office with a desk, and that's where you live for the day. That has its own drawbacks, but that's the reality. And I know of at least two government clients who have done the math to say, how long does it take people to get in and out of the building and it's a 20-story building, if I only allow 4 people in an elevator at a time? I mean, those are the types of things they're thinking through, and making reservations to go into the office and work in the building as opposed to work from home. So
Stuart, unless you have some more, Peter, you want to finish up? Okay, Stuart, then Courtney.
All those concerns that Peter just raised are valid for moving people and what have you, but for just for dealing with diseases and health and what have you, just remember, buildings have one set of air conditioning towers on the roof. So it doesn't matter what floor of the building you're in or what office you're in, you're still breathing the same air. Now, the thing is, what's going to have the biggest effect on whether people go back to working in buildings in CBDs and the like is the accountants. When they look at the bottom line at the end of this financial year and see how much less it's cost for renting floor space, insurance, claims for people tripping over in the building and all that sort of stuff, compared to people working from home, they're going to push more for people from working from home, even with the social aspect needed because we are humans. Well, some of us. But it's going to be the bottom line, the financials of the company that determine whether people are working in an office or working from home.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree. And that was one of the points I was going to make is financial. A lot of these large corporations have big investments in buildings that they've built or purchased or have 20-year leases on. And so they don't want to just abandon them, and they can't get out of their lease. And they have found that people working from home are just as efficient, if not more efficient, working at home than they are working in the office. So I think they're going to go to some type of hybrid situation where they may require employees to come in, once 1 or 2 days a week, and the rest of the time they can work at home if they've been working at home during the pandemic. And they can stagger the schedules so that, a third of the people come in on Mondays, a third come in on Tuesdays, a third come in on Wednesdays. So you're assigned 2 days a week to come in. And that way you can still have some meetings with management. Management may have to be there the full time, you don't know. And that way they can amortize their rent by still utilizing the building and keep people spread far enough apart to avoid, contamination of close quarters.
Charles, and we're going to pick up the pace just a tiny bit after this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody just said. It's going to be a very interesting change. I'm working with a bunch of networks in the city, and the first thing that somebody would ask was like, well, how are we going to have our group meetings when they would pack into a room? That's not actually possible anymore. And the only solution that we have is Zoom, and that's actually worked great. So a lot of the thoughts that they had before, working from home would not work, it's not possible. For the last year, we've solved a lot of those issues. Now, that being said, we happen to have the technology come around at the right time, and a pandemic happened at the right time, and we found a solution that say, for me, for example, I've set myself up at home where I actually don't have to go into the office. I don't have to commute. I don't have to take that time that I could otherwise just be working. Now, that's not the case for everybody, but I don't believe we're going to be going back to the same way that things were. I think it's going to be a bit of a hybrid, to say. But it is going to be interesting, and it is going to be a new part of our culture moving forward.
And I have to say, office hours has really helped with that. I would not have come so far so fast in terms of understanding virtual work without this group of people, this panel, and what Alex set up for us. Because even working with the remotes, I mean, what Charles is saying, we have done some critical listening sessions where the audio is fed at a resolution high enough for all of us to make our opinions heard, and you can literally audit digital content in a distributed thing that we weren't able to do before if you weren't in the same room listening to the same speakers. So it's been a difference, but it's been a good difference in a lot of ways. Let's move on. Go ahead.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. How can I connect a Zoom room as an attendee to a Zoom webinar when the webinar does not have an exposed passcode? In a meeting, I would use the invite option from the desktop client to add the room, but this option does not exist in attendee view.
And I may just toss it right back to Guy, who is our resident expert on how Zoom rooms operate in this kind of a world. I am pedaling in place because he looks like he's still looking at something and setting something up, and he hasn't had time.
Look at both sides. Yeah, thanks for tossing it to me. I would use the controller. So I have two different ways of doing it. Well, three different ways. So one is use the iPad and pop it in, touch the touch screen and enter in the information. The other one is I have a touch screen PC that I can pop it in there. The third one is to go into the back end and launch the controller from there as well. So three different ways to get in there. And if it doesn't have an exposed passcode, if you just have the passcode that's kind of scrambled, this was something that Liminal came up with. I don't remember where you put it, but somehow he has a way of scrambling. That's he being Andy has a way of unscrambling that passcode. It's just something you can't type in if you're like on a Facebook portal. So you actually have to descramble it, or you have to. What I do is I join the meeting and then I go into that green shield in the top left, and that will have the meeting ID and the passcode. So then I would just manually copy that, copy it with my mind and type it in manually to the other device.
Excellent. Okay, so you're going to take off your help us with Zoom hat and gently put back on your I am now handling the questions hat. And I think we're ready to move on to the next one.
I think the next one's pretty much the same. It says, when Rupert McRae asks, when joining a meeting that requires me to be logged into Zoom, it does not seem to matter which account I log into. I have several, but it does not have to be the account that I'm registered for the meeting with. So what is the point of requiring authentication to join?
Ooh, that's hard to determine. So, vetting who's in the meeting is one of, I think, the authentication reasons. But Jonas, do you want to talk more at length about the technical side?
So these are two totally separate security functions. The one is the registration link. That link will enable you to join with the personality that you have set up at register. So if you would like I would set up as Jonas Dautel, then I would come in as Jonas Dautel. That's one step that doesn't require you to require authentication in a meeting. If you require authentication in a meeting, the only thing that means is that a user has to be logged in with any Zoom account. This only prevents from I can come in with hundreds of Zoom OSC machines that are not logged in. That's the only difference why you want to enable this. And since it's harder to generate thousands of Zoom accounts, that's why you do that, to prevent some spammers. But it has nothing to do with each other, sadly.
So basically, sometimes you're seeing features that aren't designed for the way you use Zoom. You're seeing features or cautions or technical barriers that are designed for the kind of Zooms where people might want to sneak in for nefarious purposes and change things. So anyway, let's move on.
Next one is coming in from Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana. For any of you testing the Facebook portal, is there any way to share a slideshow with it?
The portal particularly. Do we have portal owners here in the panel today? I don't know how many people have them. It doesn't look like it. Guy, do you know anything? I know that you've had them around.
I have one, but I don't recall a way to share. I mean, you can touch the share button, and I remember there's whiteboard in there. You can share a computer. Actually, I guess you could do that.
This is the portal generated slideshow, right? So it's in its software. And
yeah, that's the thing, is where are the slides located, because I'm not sure how you would do it on the portal itself. You can join like your phone and have the slideshow on there, I believe, and that's because it almost acts like a room. Maybe Jonas or Peter.
Yeah, Jonas, let's go ahead and then we'll go to Peter after that.
The portal should have an option that says share from PC. At least in my testing it has. That will give you a special link that you can insert into your web browser. Then you'll join a special form of Zoom meeting where you can just share your slides that way.
You're getting some support from Peter Sargent nodding, but Peter,
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's what it does for me when I've tried it for my Amazon show. It's done that. It's kind of fun. Have the little tiny screen and then the giant screen.
Okay, we still got 12 questions and we've got about a half an hour. John, do you want to quickly weigh in on this?
I'm looking at my Facebook portal back here and it says exactly what the guys just said. So share screen from the Zoom app, and then you can use the browser from your desktop. So there you go.
Excellent. Okay, moving on.
Next one's coming in from fellow panelist Jim Hankins of Chesterfield, Michigan. What was the panelist Jonas Doddle's initial experience with the BSS 806? What are you planning on trying next?
Jonas?
So I was able to remote into Jim Hankins 806 over Parsec, which was quite nice to test some setups. And what we did was we had the Mad in the Kitchen production audio piped into a private meeting, and then ducked that audio with the 806 as soon as somebody in the meeting started talking. And then we also had, for the quiet parts, we had a music playing in the background that ducked to the Mad in the Kitchen production sound and to us. So it basically was never quiet. And what's pretty cool is if Jim has a local Zoom room, we will start to experiment with that and experiment how we could bring in his 806 into our cloud production. So we have an 806 in the cloud.
I saw that Jim had a block diagram of the setup. Do you want to put it back up, Jim? And we'll pin you for a second so at least the rest of the audience can see what was going on. I'm still seeing Jones. There we go. So it's pinned. So what are we looking at?
Yeah, that were basically multiple inputs over Dante into the 806 that then went into 2 different mixers that generated the audio for the ducking. So I could set up that it ducks earlier when I talk, but when Jim talks, it takes, he has to be louder than a specific threshold for him to duck. Then we just had 2 different outputs. One was directly into Jim's ear and one was into the meeting. So I could generate a mix minus for Jim and control music and production sound on his into his ears manually and adjust it for myself into the meeting.
It's kind of cool. So you've got weighted ducking going on. One person ducks more readily than another. Cool. All right, let's move on. Next one.
Next one's coming in from Sky Gleason. Matt in the Kitchen has been invited to test episode 07 and 08 through the OnZoom platform. Thoughts? ? Who would be willing to come in and come in through the OnZoom platform as audience members? What joy would you expect to get from that experience?
Sky, do you want to just kind of do a brief overview for people who might not be familiar with OnZoom?
Sure. Our original our agreement with the Zoom people, which are backing us as well. In the OnZoom is a way of creating a ticketed experience so that people would come into a Zoom meeting through a ticketed platform, a paywall concept. So we'd like to experiment that because we do want to continue and figure out how to be sustainable in the future. And so that's the introduction. So the 3 shows that we're making is the show, and then there's the behind the scenes with the office hours, and then we're also experimenting with this OnZoom experience. So you would come in to the show through an OnZoom. And again, we're still trying to figure it out. Jonas probably understands it better than I do.
Jonas,
illuminate. Is OnZoom for you still limited to the US? Because that halves the people. So you have to be in the US, have to agree to that, and then you can be able to join it.
That'll be interesting for an international show. So you're saying that you kind of are walling or fencing off the U.S. participants, and they have access to an experience that is the initial beginnings of a paywall experience. So I'm sure you're not going to charge them for getting into it. This is really getting complex.
Not for the first season. No, everything is free for the first season, but we are trying to experiment with this concept. And Jonas has other. Again, I hate to use the word paywall because I don't want to bleed anybody out, but we're running out of, we don't have any money. So here we go. We're trying to figure it out.
Well, I think, listen, everybody listening to this has probably experienced this. There's a thing you want to do. You get some friends together, you start doing it. But at some point, if there is no flow of any kind of money at all, the amount of effort.
It's actually the spouses start squealing a little louder.
Well, it's just human nature. You can't sustain things if you're just spending all of your time doing volunteer work. That's a bad work model. So let's have other people talk about it. Stuart, then Courtney.
Are we seriously saying it's US only and it's geo-blocked? Because that is a guarantee that somebody from my homeland will crack it, will pirate it. You're inviting us. You're holding a red rag up and saying, steal this.
Absolutely.
Geo-blocking should have been finished in the 90s.
See a lot of VPNs hitting that stream. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm confused. I don't know what on Zoom is, and you kind of explained it. Is it something similar to what Eventbrite does? And I know a lot of companies here use Eventbrite, which is a ticketing and registration server, basically, that they subscribe to. So if you have an event, you can let Eventbrite handle all the invitations and the sign-ins, registrations, and any payment, and they issue tickets, virtual tickets, to allow you to come to the virtual meeting. So if it's something like that, that would be a possibility. But if you're just looking to raise money, start a GoFundMe.
You were saying Eventbrite. I've always heard Eventbrite. Have I been messing that up?
Eventbrite. Depends on where you put
I'm sorry. It hit my ear wrong, and I thought it was a person, Evan Bright. And I was going, who's Evan, and what does he do? My mistake. Go ahead, Jonas.
Eventbrite. I don't know if there's a key in there.
Quick note on the geo-blocking. It's not actually blocking external IP addresses, but you have to agree that you're in the US to join it. And it will probably only accept US payment providers, which is the whole problem, that it's just like it only can operate for tax reasons and all the things where you talked about why payments processing all over the world is hard. It's probably the reason why.
See, real world little issues with this. I can talk to anyone from anywhere around the world, 24 hours, and I can get money. A lot of back end complications. Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, just going back to Courtney's question. Yeah, that's precisely it. But of course, greatly integrated into Zoom. You have to buy tickets and all that, similar to Eventbrite.
Okay. Well, we know that a lot of people are starting to get ready for virtual concerts and things like that. So I can certainly see why they want to suss out all the little problems beforehand on a free thing. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I would think that until you get like some real big numbers, that even if you're charging $5, $10, it's just simple math. I mean, okay, you get $5 from 100 people, that's $500. It's not even enough to, get a camera guy or an audio guy in there. So the reality is that there's probably other feeder systems that can be used. I know she wants to do a book and some of these other things, these other maybe seminars, or I know she has some corporate clients. So to me, it's more like a calling card, and I would follow it up with some sponsors that can back it, maybe an appliance company or something where getting in front of a lot of people can matter. Because right now, even if you get 1,000 people at $5, it's still, I mean, that production at 30 people times $1,000, you need like 30 grand, to do an episode solid. So got to come up with a good business model.
And what's going to happen? Somebody like Taylor Swift's going to come on and say, look, I'll do the monitor. I'll do my next album a month ahead for all my subscribers, and we'll get 70 million people up there.
Well,
that's at $5 ahead.
That's already being done out of Chicago. There's a gentleman that's going on tour city by city, and he's a well-known artist. I can't think of who it is right now, but that concept is out there. So that's why we're just trying to figure all this out. And
everything's been disrupted. It's reinventing itself as we live through these days. Let's keep moving on, because we've got still 11 more questions, and we're in 20 minutes now.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Does OBS perform well in AWS compared to vMix? Does either one have a different performance profile in AWS compared to running on local hardware with equivalent resources?
So many people are AWS producers here who have some experience with this. Jonas does. Dive in.
I have run OBS in AWS. It seems to be not different than if you would have the same parts locally. You do have some kind of virtualization overhead. Of course, that's always the case, but it seems to be similar to what you would expect locally with the same type of GPU and CPUs. In my experience, OBS runs a bit more stable but I think that's only because of you only put OBS in your system in the cloud, and there's nothing to interfere with it. So it's one of the reasons why it's more stable.
All right, let's move on. Next question.
Andy Seal in Old Bury, UK. I need a monitor for my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I bought a Andy Cine A6 Plus V2. It didn't handle bright sunlight today on a hospital roof. Am I expecting too much? And it won't display focus assist. Anyone with experience of this, is it a dud or is this a buy once, cry once call?
Brightness of monitors is a complicated thing. I think most of us who used to do that have been doing this for a long time, and I'm going to let Charles weigh in at length about this, but I know almost all of the monitors that I've ever bought for field use came with dedicated sunshades, and the only way you could absolutely be accurate about that is to literally put your face there, put your hands around your face so that you blocked out all sunlight and look directly at the phosphors on the screen, because anything in bright light, particularly for those of us, I worked in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona for most of my career. Boy, when it's 100 degrees out and the sunlight is going to hit a monitor, I don't care how many nits you got, it's going to be hard to see. So let's get to Charles and get some real technical answers here, and then we'll go to Stuart and Mickey. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so for that camera, I would suggest, I don't know your budget, but I would suggest the Video Assist from Blackmagic. It's a little pricier, but everything that you get for that price, it's pretty amazing and gets up to 2,500 nits. So it's not a bad deal. It comes with SDI in and out, HDMI in and out. And as Bill said, it's probably best that you get a hood. Now that's why you usually have at the Video Village on a set where it's actually under a hood, because in places like that, it gets very, very bright. But if you're just like, if you're a one-man shooter, if you do have a tripod, just get the hood for it. Some cases for the like these from this is a small rig housing. It's a small HD clip. It's it comes with a hood that is overly wide. You could fit your head into it. That's probably your best approach. Aside from that, maybe the Atomos that gets up to 3,000 nits. But like Bill said, you probably want to get the hood for it if you're going to be outside. It's going to help you out the most.
Go ahead, Stuart and Mickey. Go ahead, Stuart. You're muted, Stuart. There you go.
Move the mouse to the right screen, and then I can unmute the microphone. Just one thing, with Charles suggested the BMD monitor, and I would follow that up, but for completely different reasons. The Blackmagic Design ones are in a metal case. The Atomos ones are in plastic cases. Now, where Andy was talking about in the bright sunlight on a hospital roof, we don't know if he was shooting in the shade. We don't know if there was much wind. But if you have electronics with plastic cases in direct sunlight, you have to realize that the sun will heat up the plastic and it will stop heat from getting away from the device. Electronics does not like heat. The Blackmagic having the metal frames, that's a heat sink. That gets the heat away from the device, so the device will be more reliable under those conditions.
Mickey?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Charles and Stuart said. But just to add to that, other brands of monitors to consider would probably be TV Logic and also Bond. But I'm a big fan of TV Logic and Small HD myself. And I forgot the other stuff that I was going to say. Lost my train of thought.
It's okay. We all do it. I would just say that having worked in Arizona for a good chunk of my career where sunlight on screens was a definite no-no. If you don't want to go with the full-scale monitor shade from that manufacturer, which are usually custom fit and the best option if you can afford to do it, you can just take black foam core. And one of the things that's really cool about foam core is if you score it with a razor blade and crack it, rather than cutting all the way through it, the paper that's on both sides will often hold it together so you can form a nice little hood. If you then take black gaffer's tape and line your seams in such a way that you can fold it up or fold it flat. And the origami part of it, I'm leaving up to you. You can create a perfectly usable shade that'll last for at least a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months, depending on how well you take care of it. And it's super cheap. And that's much better than trying to look at the actual monitor face without any kind of shade at all. Let's quick
what?
Quick,
Sorry, we
Stuart.
lost you there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stuart, just quick, and then Mickey, quick.
Yeah, quickly, Foam Core flight test on YouTube. They have a whole series of how to cut it, how to glue it, but they're doing it for planes. But the techniques are exactly the same, and there's lots and lots of tutorials.
Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, Cinefoil will also work with that. And also, like when it comes to accessories for cameras, you don't want to skimp on that because those you can use from camera body to camera body. Camera bodies, it's I always say this, it's always a flavor of the month thing. 6 months from now, you're gonna want a different body. But the lenses, the sticks, your fluid head, monitors, you're gonna keep that as you move along. So it's not worth skimping on those.
Actually, I agree with that. All right, let's move on. Stuart, go ahead. I'm sorry, Guy for Stuart.
Okay, next question is coming in from Stuart. Friends, panelists, editors, lend me your, is this supposed to be mics or mices? Is there an equivalent to Resolve's Open Effects Color Space Transform in FCP10? I need to give a Sony camera op footage from a Scion and explain how to color it.
Boy, so we need a Resolve / Final Cut, and we need a colorist, which we happen to have. Charles, go ahead.
I would first ask Stuart, what did you shoot it in? Was it RAW? Was it ProRes? How did you shoot it?
The Scion shoots ProRes 12-bit, but it's a linear camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I need to, either I've got to go through and render the whole stuff out, or show somebody how to import it. Now in Resolve for myself, I just go linear to the color space output and bang, half of the work's done. Yeah, but somebody who's only ever shot log tends to have issues adapting to a linear workflow.
And I agree, that's an ongoing thing. I would definitely just do it in Resolve. It's in the free version. Go, let's say, to maybe a log C.
Yep. Sadly,
and then
I'm
give
not
him
the
that
editor for this project.
Right. If they do need you to give them a 709, then just do that transfer. But I would probably just give them a log C from the Scion so they could actually work properly in it. That would be your best bet.
Okay, Mickey, real quick, and we're going to move on because so dive in.
Yeah, exactly what the Charles mentioned, do a color transform within Resolve, shoot that to Final Cut, and have them do a round trip back to Resolve for final grading.
So we have 15 minutes and 10 questions to get through, so a minute and a half. So I'm going to call on 1 or 2 people and then probably move on. So go ahead, Guy.
Next one's from Stefan Smart in Glasgow. I've had a 1 terabyte hard drive fail on my laptop. The laptop is dismantled. Power is going to it and it is spinning, but Windows does not recognize it. Any hope, or is it gone?
Oh, to your hard drive recovery. That's always, I don't think anybody here is going to smile when we say the word hard drive recovery. Does anybody have any suggestions, things they've done? I will say that I had a hard drive crash on me and I sent it off to a professional, and it was unfortunately an 8 terabyte hard drive, and they came back with a quote of between $3,000 and $5,000 to recover it. So that was not pleasant. Go ahead, Peter and Gudrun, very quickly.
I've had good luck with SpinRite when that's happened in the past, but I also am maniacal about keeping backups.
Yeah, boy, you learn that lesson once it happens. Gudrun? No? Oh, okay. I thought I saw your hand up. So we'll go to Stuart and then Jonas. Go ahead, Stuart, real quick.
Assuming it's a PC hard drive, firstly, if you plug it in and it's silent, your data is safe. If it's making funny noises, turn it off now. Because funny noises mean the heads are scraping on the platters. Now, I don't know how many people know about this, but the platter of a hard drive is a piece of glass with evaporated metal onto the surface, the same sort of evaporated metal that used to be used on audio tapes. When you scrape it off, The data is gone. It cannot be recovered. But as long as the hard drive is not making any noise when it spins up, the platters are fine, and you can always get the controller board and the heads replaced and recover the data. That's where you spend a lot of money.
Okay,
If it is silent, a piece of tool to try is get back data from runtime software. I've had that work a lot of times.
Nice. Okay, moving on.
Art by Junior and Cupertino says, I'm trying to match Ike projectors to a video wall. Both get feeds from ProPresenter. Projectors also get camera program feed help.
Anybody have a solution for matching projectors? I don't know how much color control you have over them. Maybe depending on how you're feeding the signal into them, you have some proc amp control over that, but I'm not seeing a lot of hands go up. So you may have stumped this particular group. Hello, Courtney, do you want to take a quick run at it?
Well, Icky projectors and almost all projectors do have color controls if you dive deep enough into them, and you can use those to try and match them. Put up a common color chart on all of them, and if you can do Alex's little trick of split screening, and then or just go up black on one side and black on the other side, and then move the projectors so you can line them up next to each other. Then go into the projector controls and try and adjust the color balance and contrast ratio between the two of them. You do have on most projectors you do have color control where you can go in and adjust the individual RG and B values independently.
So yeah, that split screen that Alex uses and then try to make the line go away, I think was a brilliant, simple solution to try to match things. Jonas, did you want to really quickly run in on this?
You could also use the Blackmagic bidirectional converters and put a LUT on there that would confirm it. That
Okay,
could be a solve.
If you've got access to the hardware, put it in line. Go ahead, Guy, next question.
Next one's coming from our friend A. Mitchells in Washington. So for months, one of the main comments about Matt in the Kitchen has been the audio for the talent mic. Also for months, there have been multiple times that the Sennheiser and Countryman were said to be on their way to the studio that week. So why, after all this time, is the Pile the mic of choice? And then he has a note here that says, is it a tech issue at the studio? It seems a mystery. It can't be runway or time, as there has been a lot of that. It can't be budget. The gear is already owned. Yeah, okay. So why hasn't this been tried yet and the Pile swapped for the Countryman setup in these places? Why is this less important?
Schy, do you want to take a shot at that real quick and then we'll move on?
Or dodge the shot more accurately. The Countryman, unfortunately, is the single ear, which means then it will flop and flail. The Pile is the dual ear and consequently is more secure in the cooking experience and not slicing your knife through the wire. And after that, it's just sheer budget and all of the other flaming cats that I'm trying to juggle along with the rest of the experience, because love your insights. You've got a spare DBA mic laying around, I'd be happy to put it into place.
Okay, moving on. Next question.
I don't have a spare one, but the one that's literally on my head right now is going to be what will be on the next episode, unless somebody comes to the table with something. So it's literally like giving you the shirt off my back, because I'm giving up my mic that I use every day. So it will be there on Saturday. Next one's coming in from Peter Sargent in Round Rock, Texas. I have a pair of Bird Dog P100s that I would like to bring into my Atem Mini Pro. The run length is about 100 feet, so I assume I will use the SDI out. What converter should I use to convert to HDMI at the Atem?
So who, Jonas, you're waving your hands. That's enough to have me call on you.
Any of the Blackmagic converters should be fine. If you want to step it up a bit, I think, how are they called? The red ones, Guy? The red ones that everybody knows.
The Decimator?
Yeah, the Decimator. Also converts.
MDHX.
Okay, Marty, let's go to the next one. Go ahead, Guy.
Marty Attias in, actually his pronunciation I can read here, and I've been saying it wrong. Attias, it looks like. Is that how you say it? Bill?
I've always said
Is that how you say his
ATS,
last
but
name?
I might be wrong about that.
Okay. If display panels are sourced from only 2 to 3 manufacturing plants, are they really the same, or are they panels graded by quality A, B, C, Pro, Consumer, etc.?
Charles wants to dive in on this one. Go ahead.
So, so it's a combination of two things. Yes, they are hand picked, especially the higher end ones for the Flanders and some of the Panasonic screens. Those are hand picked and hand calibrated, and those are the ones that goes to those places. But also the most important thing are the chipsets and how the processing of the signal is done. That makes the second most change in the picture quality. And also remember, these companies invested billions of dollars into these plants, and they are going to use those plants to produce the screens for as long as is possible to regain their investment.
Peter?
Yeah, I would agree with Charles. I mean, one of the things that the panel plants do themselves, is they use the same concept that the chip manufacturers do, and that's called binning. So they will first of all grade the output of the panel manufacturing plant itself, but then what the manufacturers of the displays do with those in terms of marrying those with the chipsets is core to this conversation. And you can make huge differences in what happens. I mean, I know I'm using the same panels for Dell uses the same panels across all of their devices. However, there are grades of devices, panels that use different chipsets to drive the better picture quality and better speed.
Courtney, can you do it in 10 seconds?
Yeah, it's what everyone else said. It's the scaler, which is the chipset that does the scaling and the positioning of the pixels on the panel. The panel is separate from the scaler, and that's the controller board that's on the back. And those can be sourced from a variety of different manufacturers. And the backlight is the other big difference. Is you can have micro LEDs, you can have edge lit, and that makes a big difference in the quality of the image that you see, even though they all have the same panel.
Next question.
Next one is coming in from Adiris Haggy in Fairfax. Zoom conference setup for interview panel question. Each panel member would need wireless mic plus another mic for local audio room question. What mics and interface would you recommend that can handle wireless mics, room speakers, audience mic, and all going to Zoom stream? Thanks. Love this show.
Boy, this sounds like a complex mix. Mickey, take it on.
Yeah, definitely for something like this, you don't want a simple, just like a computer audio interface. You'd want to go with a full-on board. Lots of brands out there, Soundcraft, Allen Heath, I think Yamaha and Behringer are popular with this group. Yeah, you'd want a full-on board to make proper mix minuses for each output.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching, if you haven't run across the idea of mix minuses, do some research on that. It is critical to be able to extract the person talking from the sound mix and send it back to them without getting all sorts of problems. Mickey, you want to add something before we move on?
just to add as well, if this is an installation job wherein it might not be, you might not have someone attending to the mix each time, look at the Shure Microflex, what do you call it, systems with some sort of audio processor like the 806 that Jim has.
Okay, move on.
Next one's from Tilalik Miguel Waterman in New York. Is there any tech on the horizon that could help mitigate the problems Wi-Fi gives us with packet loss in streaming?
That's going to be a tough one. I normally have the solidest signal around because I'm on a fiber line direct back, but I think I'm losing all sorts of packets today. So sometimes it's just the way it is. Stuart, you want to really quick in there, and then Courtney really quick, and we've got a few more to get to.
Yep. Cable.
There you go. Hardwire will always fix any sort of wireless thing 99 times out of 100. Go ahead, Jonas.
And like, if you think about why it happens, there are some packets lost. You would need to send them multiple times. If we get better compression algorithms that could, for the same data rate that we send a packet now once, send it twice, that could help. But especially since you have a problem in low latency streaming, in like longer latency streaming with SRT, it's fine because you can recover from packet loss. There will always be problems because you always want.
Still got 5 questions and only 3 minutes, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Go ahead, Guy.
Eric Butkus, Chicago. I'm trying to install Unreal Engine on an iMac running Big Sur. I have 382 gigabyte. Oh, is that RAM? 358 gigabyte per. Okay, so it's hard drive space. But it says that I don't have enough disk space to install the program. Any thoughts? Note installation says 28 gigabytes needed, 20 gigabytes available. I think this is a Big Sur issue as I'm having issues installing other software.
Yeah, hard drives do not like to get full. I will just say that as a general thing. If you're working toward the top end of your hard drive, you got to throw some stuff away, because between caches and stuff, hard drives get into trouble if they get too full. My rule is always try to leave 15 to 20% of the hard drive capacity open at all times. And if I get close to that, I start dumping things left and right. Jonas, you really quick, you want to add something else?
Also, if it's an external hard drive, check if there's a hidden folder that has the bin on it. There has been issues where the bin is still located on an external drive and clogs up your disk.
Okay, moving on.
David Brady in New York. One of my Stream Deck displays last known companion button page even when the computer is powered down. One of my Stream Deck displays the last known companion button page even when the computer is powered down. The other two drop to the generic Stream Deck icon. Any ideas what may be wrong?
Any Stream Deck pros? Go ahead, Jonas.
Since they are just a display, try to switch where they are plugged in. My guess is in the powering down, it actually sends the new image of what it should display when it's powered off, and one of the ports gets powered off before it can send that data.
Okay, we're going to move on because we've got 3 questions and we've got under 2 minutes, and I don't know if Alex is going to pull the plug right in the middle of a sentence. So real quick.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas. Any experiences with auto-tracking cell phone mounts like the Pivo Pod? And he has a link there.
Anybody use that? I'm looking around, but I don't see any hands going up, so I don't think we have any experience with that. So call back when the panel gets bigger, and we'll see if we can find somebody to help you. Go ahead, next question.
Ron in Montana asks, my goal is to start a YouTube channel and do a podcast. I have a Logitech 920 web camera. I believe that's just a statement, not a
Yeah, you've got the best. You've got basic stuff, and so just keep watching Office Hours. We talk about this stuff all the time. You will learn a lot. You will be able to do it. Stuart, you have a couple of words on this before we get to the last question?
Yeah, that's actually following on a question that we did earlier where he didn't put enough detail about what he was recording on. I actually suggested to Ron in the chat the starting off would be a Rode Podcaster.
Okay, good. Mickey, you have a last little piece before we get to Dan's last question?
The microphone I would recommend for that would be the Shure MV7. Get a couple of them. It has both USB output and also XLR, so you can grow with it. You can start off with the USB connection without the need of an audio interface. But when you start building up your system, you can bring in a real board and hook it up via XLR.
Last question. Let's bring this home.
Last one coming in from Dan Maliska in Nelson, BC. My Sony a7 II has a camera error message. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Hidden somewhere on most Sony bodies is a reset button that you need a pin to press. You can try that, but otherwise you're talking to your Sony service agent.
Yeah, you also might have a button battery in there and it might be dead, so try replacing that. Wow, at least we made it through all of them. I have no idea when we're going to suddenly go off the air, but great job, everybody on the panel, for getting us through a 2-hour raw thing. It's been so much fun doing this. I'll see you. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, with the regular show. Alex should be back. I'll be back on Wednesday, then Alex Thursday, and me closing out because he's busy this week. He's got lots of money to make. So thank you all for being a part of Office Hours today. Truly appreciate it. It is stunning the amount of knowledge and just generosity that everybody on the panel exhibits every day here. And thank you all who are participants, who are adding questions and stuff like that. I think it is time to leave. So whoever's got the con can press the button and